Welcome back to Tasteland. I am your co-host, Francis Zierer.
And I'm Daisy Alioto.
And Daisy, who are we speaking with today?
Today we're speaking with Ochuko Akpovbovbo. She's the creator of the popular culture and marketing newsletter As Seen On, which I read every time it hits my inbox. And she has an amazing lens on culture that isn't American-centric, which I really appreciate. And I'm really excited to speak with her today.
She's Nigerian. She was recently living in Germany. I'm not sure really where she is now, but she also, as I was preparing for this, she went to the same college as me, which was a funny surprise.
Oh, I knew that she had ties to Portland, so that'll be a fun conversation point.
You know who else I recently found was an alum of the illustrious Lewis and Clark College was Quinn Slobodian, who I first heard about when we had Josh Citarella on around this time last year. He has written a few books that are like core to the canon of what Josh does. This one, let me see the full title. The one that Josh recommended
covering the political right?
A bit of that, yes. Okay, what's this one called? Yeah. Globalists, the End of Empire and the Birth of Neoliberalism. But he had one out this year, Hayek's Bastards, the Neoliberal Roots of the Populist. I think he's a teacher at, it might be Boston College. I might have that wrong. But yeah, I have to admit, I bought the book Globalists after Josh recommended it to us, but I've yet to read it.
Interesting.
What I did just finish reading over the Thanksgiving break is a book that came to me through another friend of the pod, former Tasteland guest, which is Charlie Baker of The Fence.
One of my favorites.
I read an excerpt in The Fence of Uncommon Ground by Patrick Galbraith, and I bought it a couple months ago. The excerpt was really good. The excerpt was about like this. It's like first person journalism. The book is about like land access right to Rome in the UK. And the excerpt was he goes with his friend to an illegal rave in like on a mountain in Wales, and it's hard for him to get there, and it's this whole rigmarole to do. But it's from a chapter in the book that's about like how people transgress on land and about people doing that, or going to pick magic mushrooms, or walking around in the nude, which they're not called nudists there; they're called naturists.
That's classic British.
Anyways, I really enjoyed the book. I'd recommend it. I bought it and then it sat because the writing's it's highly readable. It's really fun, the voice. But I felt it sat on my shelf for a while because I felt it was too indulgent to read a 300-some page book about land access rights in the UK.
Well, I think you should indulge. I read a new Ben Lerner book.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was a quick read. It's almost like novella length.
I've never read.
Surprised me.
Mr. Lerner. I'm unlearned.
You would like his stuff. I don't know where to start, where I would start with him. I guess I've read his stuff in order because Leaving the Etosha Station is the first thing I read. But I would actually be really interested in your perspective on his work.
On Mr. Lerner? Yeah, perhaps I'll read it. One other thing, also maybe we should have Patrick on. I think author of Uncommon Ground. I think it could be a fun one. But one other thing I want to bring up about it before we move on, I was Googling it to send like a link to a friend of, hey, you should check this out. And I found, so there's Right to Roam, which is like an activist organization. And the book kind of starts with him not repudiating their cause, but basically providing nuance, the kind of thing of like, oh, it's not necessarily that we lack the right to access all this land. It's more about we need to engage with it better. There needs to be education. If we just open this land up, it'll be bad for conservation, et cetera. Anyways, he, the whole point is that he tries to offer a nuanced take, and it's not just like pure on the side of the activists. But on the Right to Roam website, they have this page, Falsity, Misrepresentation, and Breaches of Privacy, it's British, and Trust in Uncommon Ground by Patrick Galbraith. And it's this very long, like couple thousand words maybe. Yeah, a clapback. As they say, having reviewed the contents of this book, we have identified many factual inaccuracies, misrepresentations, and breaches of privacy and confidence. These apply not just to Right to Roam campaigners, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, I like the drama. It's a good book. I'd recommend it. That was my Thanksgiving break.
I listened to friend of the pod, W. David Marks, on How Long Gone.
Mm-hmm. I
learned a lot about Japanese denim, as one does.
Okay, well, let's test that knowledge, Daisy. Name a brand.
Yeah, so that's very
okay. So
we
come
start
on.
to fall off.
Oh God!
It wasn't as much about brands; it was more like breaking them in strategies. So.
Like wearing them in the bathtub and such.
Yeah, putting them in the freezer.
Mm-hmm. Where are you calling us from right now? I know that you could be in Portland, no longer in Germany. Where are you?
The amount of meetings that start with that question is just like hilarious.
Okay,
I'm in Portland.
I'm sorry. I'll show myself out.
No, you're good. It's completely valid. I went to like a party recently and they were asking like fun facts about yourself. And I was like, I am technically like legally not a resident of any country right now. Like I am a citizen of a country, but I haven't lived there in 10 years. So I'm not a resident. I don't live in the US, don't live in Germany anymore. And so let me tell you, taxes this year are going to be fun. Very fun.
How do you do you get like one accountant who can like handle every country for you?
Theoretically, that's what I'm working on doing right now, but it's a nightmare. It really, truly is. I need to get my life sorted. And I'm like, I don't know, in this weird long distance marriage, it's fun times. So,
LDM.
Yeah.
The old long distance marriage.
The old LDM.
Also, Chico, last time we talked, you had like thrown out everything in your wardrobe. So I'm interested how your re-wardrobing journey is going.
Okay. It's going really, really well. Okay, so for context, I moved to Germany 3 years ago. When I graduated from college, I started working at Adidas immediately. Saw money for the first time in my life. Went crazy on Zara, literally crazy. There was one summer in particular, God, it was so bad. When I moved to Germany, hated all my clothes over time. And so when I was leaving, I just donated everything. There are these like massive steel boxes on the streets in Nuremberg. And you could just chuck stuff in there. They're like huge like donation steel boxes. And so I just chucked all my clothes. I put the rest of my furniture in storage. I moved here. And when I came in the summer, my husband was like, well, you don't have any clothes, Ochuko. Like, what's happening? But I had developed this like anxiety about shopping because I hadn't done it in a really long time. And so Daisy and I talked about it. But I have clothes now. I'm doing a partnership with Cezanne and they've been thankful to send me a bunch of stuff. So I have that stuff. And now I've been spoiled. I'm being one of those like obnoxious, but I mean, you know, they're on the right path. People where I'm like, oh, I'm only buying quality clothes now. And so like I'm a bit of a Zara snob, but it's going well.
I feel like really well. This would have been a great, I mean, it sounds like it is a great opportunity to partner with a brand of, you know, I threw out my entire wardrobe and now with Uniqlo, I'm reclothing.
Exactly.
We were talking about teeing that up, but yeah, maybe a little for the brands, a little for yourself, I think is the best way to do it.
That's just life.
One for them, one for me.
What is it? You guys had a recent episode. I don't know if it was recent on like the concept of like the sellout. I was talking about it with my husband because he hates the word creative, but he does like music, jazz. He's a jazz musician, but now he's doing more videography because, you know, money, much of my influence. I was like, babe, if you want to marry me. But we're talking recently about the concept of being a sellout, and you know, I listened to another podcast where someone was saying millennials like killed that idea. Like everyone is a sellout and everyone is so proud of it. And I looked at him and said, I'm such a professional sellout. Like I don't care. Like, I would sell anything.
It's the natural mode.
Yeah. Exactly. Big on that.
Okay, I have to address very briefly. I don't know how interesting this will be for our listeners, but the fact that we both went to Lewis and Clark. I went to Lewis and Clark? I went to Lewis and Clark as well. She
was so shocked her AirPod fell out. Listener,
if only there was
a physical gag, little comedy gag.
Do you know how random that is? When people ask me where I go, nobody's
ever heard of it. It's what is it, the 178th best college in America or something? It doesn't really exist.
Yes.
Anyways, we don't have to linger on the Lewis and Clark thing, but I was shocked to open up your LinkedIn or wherever I had found it. I didn't know people still
It
went
is
there.
shocking. We're out here. Oh my God, I'm so proud of us.
The Portland to podcast pipeline.
Yes.
Well, Ochuko, I wanted to ask because this month is like end of year lists month, especially for books. And you're a prolific reader. I remember talking with you about Lonely Crowds when that came out. And then I always pay attention to the stuff that you say about books, and always like also trying to think of books I could recommend to you. But I'm curious, like, what you read this year that really stuck with you, and any books that you're trying to kind of get in under the wire for the end of the year. I'm sort of at the point where I'm like, will I read another book this year? Maybe
No.
I'm done.
I'm at that point too. Well, I actually had an interesting year in books. I wrote an essay. Do you guys know Pandora Sykes? I do the 2 Girls, 1 Book chat with her.
Yes.
So early in the summer, I published an essay with her that went like semi-viral. It was a nice personal essay about how basically the reason I read so much was because Germany was so boring and I had nothing else to do, and how I was kind of ashamed of how much I was reading because I felt like it signaled some like loser shit because I was reading like almost 200 books in a year. Basically, that's what the essay was about.
There's a lot of books.
Yeah, it's a lot of, who does that? God. I then wrote an essay for her about a month ago about how I had been delivered. I had a life now. I'm no longer in Germany, and therefore I don't read anymore. I haven't been reading, and how it's like causing this existential crisis. I went through like 2 months of just like not reading books. But I forced myself in the last month-ish to get back on it. And it's been pretty nice. But this is the first year in a while that I would read less than 100 books in a year, which is confronting. I don't know. It might not sound like a thing, but it's a thing to me. Like, who am I?
I've read maybe 30, but some of them are really short. So 100 is like insane to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have a life. I didn't. So, but I guess like to answer your question more directly, I recently read The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kinsolver. It's the one about like this priest going to the Congo with his 4 daughters because he's like, I don't know, not a priest, pastor. He's a missionary, and how it was just like horrible. He's in like the forest in Congo and everything. It was a really good book. It was cloying. I read it on the plane here to Portland. It was cloying and it was horrible. And I have this weird thing where I don't like to read books about Africa by white people.
I think that's extremely valid.
Yeah.
Is Barbara Kingsolver white?
Yeah, she's a white lady. Mm-hmm. But it's fine. It's a good book. I'm glad she wrote it. But it was really interesting so I went into Goodreads, right, to see what people were saying about it. And a lot of people were saying, this white woman, doing like writing this horrible depiction of Africa is so one-dimensional. I was like, actually, no, it's exactly like that. It's horrible. Like, it's in the jungle. It's like, it was horrible. And so that was like a really, really, really powerful, good book. I think I would recommend to everyone. It's a great book. I loved it. But yeah, it's been a pretty good year in reading. And I did put out a book gift guide recently that did really well. They were like, I don't know, more than 50 book recommendations. I did it with another Substack bookish person. So
it was really a big list. I would describe the way it was structured. I mean, I guess a lot of gift guides are structured like this, but I would describe it as sort of infatuation style categorization. Which, when I say that, I mean like, the restaurant to go to with your mom for happy hour before you go to a play. This very specific categorization that you did well there.
We tried
that
to
was
make
really
it
smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll make it an annual thing, I think.
Do you think, so I'm curious, we don't have to go so much into the living in Germany thing. But this board, is it unique to Nuremberg? Like when you went to other cities in Germany, did you feel like there was more to do?
Yeah, Nuremberg is a very boring place. I mean, if you think about what you know about Nuremberg.
That's why they did the trials there.
You
had your own Nuremberg trial.
Yeah, no, literally. That's a good one. I had my own Nuremberg trial. Yeah, that was rough. No, Nuremberg is really boring, just in general. It's like known in Germany. It's just this. So I worked at Adidas and I got transferred to the global HQ, which happens to be in Nuremberg because, Adi Dassler is from Nuremberg. And so it was this really interesting thing where you have this company that's supposed to be a global cultural powerhouse, right? And then it's situated in just the place with just no culture in terms of like cool. It's a conversation we'd have in the office often about like, how are people supposed to get inspiration? How are people supposed to, interact, just feel excited about their jobs when they're in Nuremberg? There was so much attrition just in the role and the company in general that it was a company of expats pretty much. They just brought a bunch of us in. And so, but it was a whole thing that people just spend 2 years or forever in Nuremberg. And the people who spend forever are people who got married. There was a huge thing of people would just marry each other. If you meet someone at Adidas and you ask them, they tell you they're married, you automatically assume their spouse works at Adidas or Puma, which is like a couple.
The brother company.
Down the street. Exactly. So it was very, the company, it felt like being on campus. There were thousands of us. We went to work on bus shuttles because we lived in Herzog. Adidas was in Herzog. Nuremberg was, about an hour away, like Beaverton, Portland, I don't know.
Which is for the listener, Beaverton is the town, it's like a wealthy suburb of Portland, you could say, but it's technically a separate town. But that's where Nike headquarters is, as well as the US Adidas headquarters.
Yeah, exactly. So it was that kind of thing. But it was fun in a way because the good part about living in Nuremberg, about living in Germany, was that you could leave. Germany is pretty central when it comes to like European travel, right? And so we'd go to other cities, we'd do a bunch of stuff. And that was really fun. And it was cheap and it was nice. But yeah, I think Nuremberg is uniquely very slow, very boring in Germany. But honestly, I don't think I will live in Europe again.
Well, okay, really quick, kind of as excuse me, as an aside here. So I understand that your newsletters, and with your newsletter, you hadn't really identified as a writer ever before, and you started writing this newsletter, but it came out of this exact boredom that you're talking about, right? I think that story I heard you tell is that your boss or somebody you worked with was like, we need to understand what the kids are into. Can you you're in your early 20s at the time. Can you make a newsletter compiling what's cool right now for internal circulation? And then that is the genesis of your very popular newsletter now as Sinon.
Exactly. Yeah. So I started doing that when I worked at Adidas in Portland, right?
Okay.
And so I had a brand comms role for Adidas Originals. It was super cool. Best job of my life. I loved it. And then when I got transferred to Germany, I was in a very, when you're just those big companies, you're in a very horizontal role where you're basically, no, you don't. But it was a paper pushing role, in my opinion. Like my job was literally to communicate things in specific ways to like different teams who will actually do the execution. And I had this huge paranoia of being just like forgotten in Nuremberg. And, I wanted to create the newsletter as a live-in resume to people when I eventually went back to the US to see that, hey, I didn't go there and disappear. This is what I'm doing. I have thoughts. And so that's how it started pretty much. Yeah. Out of boredom and like a lot of fear of just being swallowed up into the averageness of where I was living.
Do you think all of the reading that you were doing also contributed to making you a more confident writer at the time that your newsletter was taking off?
Completely. And it's one of those things that you don't think about it like, oh, I'm going to read to become a better writer, even though, that's what you're supposed to do. But once I didn't start the newsletter for a very long time, maybe like 5 months-ish, I sat on it because I was like, I can't write. I have all these ideas. I have all these thoughts. I'm always having dialogues to myself, sending my friends stuff, but I'm not a writer. I can't write, which is actually why the newsletter took the form of the paragraphs in the bullet point format, because I was like, oh, I can't write long form, but this I can maybe get away with. And it turns out that it, worked perfectly. And now I do a little bit of both. But yeah, the reading helped completely because you don't realize how it's just helping you synthesize thought a lot more. It's giving you more words. It's giving you just more context to different stuff. Because when I write the newsletter, you're talking about a bunch of different industries, right? And then how do you even have the verbiage to talk about those industries? How do you have the context or the history? And so, just doing that kind of reading did help me a lot with the writing.
Do you think there are emergent styles of writing that are native to Substack, or that people are sort of being engineered by the platform to communicate in a certain way?
There's been a lot of thought about this. And so just for context, like I'm 26, like this is, there's been like the blog era and all of that. But I would say I was very like young when that was happening, and I was not sort of, tapped in. So I'm not going to say this is net new. I'm saying this is something that Substack is bringing back. Substack this year is very different than it was even last year. I will say that. This year...
Say more about that. This is very interesting to me.
So this year, it's been obvious that Substack has been putting a lot of its energy behind those like really big players, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you joined Substack last year, it was just like the Wild West. It was very easy to be no one and become someone on Substack. It was very easy to go viral. It was very easy to do these things. Substack this year, I think every other week you get this announcement of like Charlie XCS joined Substack or Lizzo joined Substack, or I don't know, some really big former journalist from this, big publication joins Substack. That is where the narrative is going to right now. And to be fair, I guess, that's where they're making their money from, not from the like artists who are, they don't put paywalls, but from those really big names. And so in a way, Substack is becoming more of an institution than it was. And so it is putting value on different type of work. And I will explain what I mean. So when I joined Substack last year and the year before, when I was just like reading Substacks, if you were a young woman in her 20s, you were in New York, you had a certain type of job, and you wrote about life and your feelings and, those kind of like bloggy diary entry kind of stuff, just, ideas, thought, or things that maybe were not the, just, what I'm talking about, that kind of stuff. Yes. Stuff that, because how you would go viral in Substack would be people, taking a line or two of what you've written and then, restacking it. And they restack it, it goes on the notes feed, and then it blows up. Or people sharing it like, oh, this essay really resonated with me on TikTok, right? And so that kind of stuff where it's just like that one line that is so poetic, hits, kind of fits everyone's situation, sort of. That kind of work will go viral a lot. And I think there was a lot of pushback on that last year. And a lot of, people saying this is, Substack isn't rewarding good writing. It's not serious, a lot of listicles, a lot of, personal girly girl essays, that kind of thing. There was a lot of pushback.
Well, I would say, I think Emily Sundberg and you both wrote two very popular pieces about this. Actually, exactly. Allow me to quote you here for a second. I pulled up the worst thing to be on Substack is a Substacker essay. So I'm going to read like a paragraph from this. This is from October 2024. Now read carefully because I want you to understand what I'm trying to explain here. On Substack, you have the creators, the writers, and you have people like me who don't identify as either of those things. I'd argue that this category makes up the majority of the platform. I work in sports, and one of the most interesting things I've heard about the running market is that the biggest chunk of it doesn't even consider themselves runners. Millions of people go on runs pretty regularly and buy running shoes maybe once or twice a year. Only a small segment of those millions self-identify as runners. Most people writing on Substack don't even identify as writers. Instead, they identify as Substackers, definitely non-derogatory, a term that carries its own baggage and implications. And then the final bit here. Substackers write across various categories, but are united by the fact that while they don't have established writing careers, writing is the medium they love to create and engage with. Being a Substacker rather than a writer is less about writing itself and more about self-identification, which has everything to do with confidence and some to do with gatekeeping. And so what I'm hearing from you now is that like what you're seeing is just a continuation of this, where that category is maybe, I don't know if dying or pushed out is the word, but like, I mean, obviously the way Substack makes money is by taking a cut of paid subscriptions. Yeah. And so these people, in as much as they are not writers and do not, if they aren't building writing products that people want to pay for, they're not a priority, because why would they be?
Exactly. Completely. These people are, the long tail of the platform, they're not generating a lot of income from Substack. And so if you think about it, and, they might put out all these essays, that I know is checked with their PR team and stuff about, being like, the future of media and whatever. But they're a company, they want to make money. If you follow how they've raised, they need to make a lot of money, and they need to get really creative about how you're doing that, right? And so from that perspective, I understand why they're putting focus on who they're putting focus on. And I will say, I haven't read that essay in a long time. Even looking back on that a year ago when I wrote that, I would have been completely fine with identifying as a Substacker. Now I wouldn't be. I didn't realize this until this very conversation, but that isn't a thing in the Substack realm to be proud of anymore. There is so much, now more than ever, and I think this is by and large a good thing. There's a lot of emphasis on, skill, of like deep knowledge, of actually providing value to your paying readers. Right now, I'm working on a rebrand next year that's going to be very, design focused.
Heard it here first, folks.
I need to get a logo. I need to get stuff in order. I need less typos, that kind of thing.
Did you do a mini rebrand though? Because I remember you sent me some color options.
Yeah, but I didn't put that into effect. I was like, no, we need better. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. I will come back to you on that. But, expect something in January. But there is a lot of that, right? A lot of sitting down and being like, okay, every other day there's someone putting out a note of like, I can't pay for all these Substacks, and I'm the same way. Like, I can't pay for all these Substacks, and I'm a huge supporter of all the Substacks.
Well, wait, really quickly,
right?
If you don't mind, you don't have to tell us exactly how many people pay for years, but I know it was, I think about a year ago, maybe a little more, that you turned on a paywall, and now it's like I don't know if it's every third or so is like half paywalled. Are you doing a brisk trade in subscriptions there?
No. So right now I have a bit below like about 900 paid subscribers, right? And I put it on in January. Most of my income comes from
partnerships.
Like the vast majority of my income comes from partnership. That's what makes me able to do the newsletter full time. So a lot of my energy goes towards that. This year has been so important in terms of like learning, like how to manage my time, how to schedule stuff in, how to work with PR people versus how to work with, paid sponsors, what to make free, what to pay. Well, I was struggling finding a balance between, if people are paying $8 a month for this and I put out 3 newsletters a week, give and take, why should only one be paywall? Shouldn't 2 be paywall? But then if I have this partnership, if I have a lot of partnerships, then I have to make all of them not paywall. Mm-hmm. It's just like this whole fun thing that you have to figure out that I didn't think about at all. And so year was...
Are you, so if you don't no longer call yourself a Substacker, are you calling yourself a writer, a creator, an entrepreneur, an operator? Like, is there some word that you
I call myself a writer. Although, if you've noticed on my LinkedIn, I haven't changed. I stopped working at Adidas.
I know, it says you still work there.
Yeah, I haven't changed it because, God, like, I don't know how to communicate what I do in a way that makes it sound serious. I know it's such a like random thing, but even when I meet people now, I used to just be able to say, yeah, like I work in brand at Adidas, and that was that. And people had a picture of you, there wasn't need to explain much. I find that, especially maybe because I work in Portland and not somewhere like New York where people do a bunch of, whatever that could mean stuff,
Multi-hyphenate.
Exactly. When I tell people I'm a writer, which honestly I don't, I tell them, oh, I write a business newsletter or I do consulting. That's what I tell people. When I just like meet them randomly, like if I go to a party with my husband or something like that. But I do find that I'm having a bit of friction in my mind owning that and being like, this is what I do now, just because I don't know. I would have to like really dig into my brain for what that is. But I told myself that by the end of the year, I will change, I will change my LinkedIn thing and announce to the world. But there is some friction in my head about leaving that corporate title behind and what I think it represents. So I'll be honest about that.
I think this is maybe the other side of the coin, but I was talking to a friend who is works inside a large, prestigious media company, and she was talking about honing her taste there to the point where she felt like she now has the confidence where she could have her own thing. And I was like, I support this 100%. The thing that you don't necessarily realize being on the other side of it is the amount of time and energy you would spend justifying the existence of that thing.
Yes.
Which is not something that you think about when you work inside an institution that already has credibility. And so she was sort of asking me like, well, what is it like you could kind of do whatever you want. And I'm like, theoretically, I could do whatever I want. But most of the energy from that freedom is spent justifying the ongoing existence of something that I didn't inherit prestige or credibility or, reputation. So it's a bit of a grass is greener on the other side thing. And I feel like you're sort of getting at that, which is the part of the work that is establishing and maintaining the credibility. Part of it comes down to the language that you use to describe the project. At the same time, like, you can't will it into existence by just using that language over and over again. And I think I've seen people try to do that, and it doesn't, the way that they're describing their project doesn't match the reality. But you know what goes into it. You know the amount of preparation. So at a certain point, you just have to like kind of step back and observe what you've created from an objective standpoint, and then own the real description of everything that goes into it.
Yeah, completely. Because we've had a conversation about this, Daisy, in an interesting way where we're talking about visibility and you yourself as the brand and being out there. And I want to get your take on that. But just for some context on my side and where I am on that. So it's interesting. There's this newsletter I really love. It's called Gift Guide by Caitlin Phillips.
She's the best.
Yeah, she's awesome. A while ago, she wrote like a roundup of her favorite newsletters. And then she wrote about a scene, and she's like, I don't know who this girl is. Please update your about me page or whatever, which is very, Caitlin Phillips, which made me laugh. But even if you look at my about page on a Sinon, there's like nothing there.
I know. It's the default. Yeah. I looked at it yesterday. Yeah. It's literally the default.
There's nothing there at all. And a friend of mine went to a party the other day. It was like a, media people thing. And someone was asking me, like, have you met Ochuko? Like, what is she like? Like, who is she? And this is not something that I've done intentionally, but I realized that I do have a really big aversion to like defining things and defining myself, and just like, just being like, this is who I am and this is what I do. And nothing has brought that to light more than having the Substack, Mm-hmm. Why won't you like put this very clearly out there? It's also part of why I've struggled to even post about the Substack on LinkedIn. It's just like this whole thing that I didn't know. When you start your own thing, it just kind of like being in a relationship. A lot of things that are inside you just like really comes out. It's also part of why we've talked about this, Daisy, why I have such an aversion to the idea of moving to New York, where Portland is nice because you can really keep everything you do church and state. Like, I'm not going to go anywhere in Portland where someone's going to be like, oh, you write a Sinon. Or I'm not going to, if there's an event to go to, I'm like, yeah, I don't live in Portland. I don't live in New York. I can't come to this event. Because to me, I very much take comfort in just separating all that out. But it's, it's come to a point in the newsletter where it's been a detriment to the newsletter. And I
want to ask about this for a second. So with the newsletter, it's so voicey, right? Which is such a annoying word, but you have a very strong voice and it comes across very well. But like you're saying, on LinkedIn, you're not really broadcasting anything there. On your Instagram, I think it hasn't been updated in like most of the year.
Yeah.
It's private. Well, I found one that's not
That's
private.
my book Instagram.
Your book. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's that one, which
that's her book Instagram.
Okay. But anyways, you got like 3,000 followers there. There's nice shots of your apartment in Nuremberg and pictures of books and such. And so, but it it's lying fallow basically. And so I'm wondering, like, you're talking about this, but I'm wondering if you just like don't want to have to translate that voice into, front facing video or whatever it is. It's much easier to translate bits of what you're doing in the newsletter to LinkedIn. But I don't know, talking to you now too, you're charismatic. Like you are very opinionated. Clearly, if you translated a version of this newsletter onto Instagram, into video, it would probably do well. Are you like against doing that? Are you like, it's a chore. I'm going to have to do it eventually. I know. Say more.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I didn't realize all this until pretty recently, but I have a very strong, I resent how much you have to give to get where you want to go in this world that we live in. Right? I just
try sometimes to get what you need.
Yeah. I really resent it. And I didn't realize that at first. You know, when I started the newsletter, I was like, yeah, I'm going to make it. When I was struggling with, you know, could I write or could I not write? My whole thing was just write the way you speak, write how you think. And that worked, right? And so then I would get feedback from people like, oh, well, you know, you should say more about yourself. You should like include tidbits about your life. And, you know, you should open up your Instagram. You should do this, do that, come to New York more. And I started to like really resent it and be like, oh, why is this not enough? Why is I'm coming here to give you information and context analysis? You know, why is it not enough? And yeah, I really just don't. I do like that separation. I'm not enamored at all with the media world.
Wait, I'm getting deja vu of a conversation we had about 11 months ago when we had Emily Sundberg on, and it was about the time that she switched from doing a selfie, like a MacBook selfie at the top of every newsletter to, you know, a year later, it's much different. And it feels much more like Feed Me the Media brand and not like Emily's newsletter, right? Still is, and it still has the DNA of that, and people still come to it for that. But like she was wrestling with this idea of, you know, she'd become too visible. And being in New York, there was a specific story where she'd gone to dinner and somebody had recognized her next to her and she just didn't like it. Right. And so what I'm hearing from you is like, you don't even want to try to wade into that. You don't want to put your selfie at the top of the newsletter. Not that you would have to do that, but you are just like, you are kind of opting out of that parasocial relationship building aspect of a creator driven newsletter. You're opting out of it now. You don't want to do it at all.
Yeah, I don't want to do it at all. But I know that it's I'm one of those girls that just has, my friends laugh at me so much, like, Ochuko has such great boundaries. Like, I just don't want to do things I do not want to do, especially if it doesn't have a justifiable reason in my head. But I'm coming to realize that, okay, Ochuko, you do need to, you know, you should come to New York sometimes. You know, a lot of stakeholders, you know, are there. You should, you know, I'm not going to open up my Instagram or anything, but you should maybe, I don't know, like do your freaking bio on your, as seen on, you know, you should post on LinkedIn, you should do this. So a lot of what I'm trying to do next year is put my work out there more, because last year, just being on Substack was enough. You know, that whole engine was just enough. Now it's not enough anymore. You know, it takes a different thing to go from 0 to 100, then from 100 to the next 100, that kind of thing.
You're around 25,000 subscribers now, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so I'm going to need something else to get the next 25,000 that I did to get. And I think a lot of that is being more visible in different ways. But I have to figure out what that looks like for me. Obviously, it's not going to look like a selfie on the newsletter. That's not what people are coming there from. But maybe just a bunch of different things that I will need to do. And I've made my own peace with that. But sometimes I just think of comments I see on people's newsletters, right? Or when readers demand things of you. I don't know how to describe what I'm saying, but you know, there's a strange dynamic when you put something out there into the world where people have an assumed power dynamic, right? So if someone comes to your comment and, you know, to your comment section, it says something just like kind of stupid or rude or whatever, there's an assumed power dynamic where it's like, you know, you have to be kind of nice to them, or you owe them some sort of, you know, because then if you're a bit mean to them, or if you give them the same energy, it's sort of like, oh, Ochuko was mean to that person who pays for her work or whatever, or I have such an aversion for over-explaining myself to readers, or over-explaining, you know, my thoughts or my opinions or where I stand on. I don't know what it is. I'm like, you don't know me. It's very anti-internet age, but I don't like it at all. And so I think that subconsciously I have put in a lot of boundaries in my work and in my writing where I hope people know that they just can't do that. Because, you know, it's a weird thing to confront, but I am confronting it. And I think next year you'll see a lot of changes in the newsletter because I hopefully worked through a little bit of that, how much you have to give to get what you want. So, yeah.
I have a very clear memory of the summer after college. I was the last person in my friend group to get a job. I had an internship at NPR in DC. I was sitting in my apartment in Silver Spring. I was applying to so many jobs, and I was really despairing because I was like, I can't go home. I can't go back to Massachusetts without a job. And there's a whole lore about this. And part of it involves Madeleine Albright, which is a story for another day. But I was watching this other thing play out online where this girl who's like much younger than me, she turned her experience working in the Wiener campaign into this article, and then all of a sudden became a contributor. And that girl was Olivia Nuzzi. And
Ooh.
I have such a clear memory of sitting on my laptop in Maryland being like, who is this girl? Why can't I? How is this person breaking through? Why can't I break through? Why can't I get a job? I've done everything right.
Now you
and that
know.
followed me. Like, I watched her whole arc. And if you asked me if I would trade places with her today, I would say, hell no. But it's very interesting to see. I think parasociality, obviously super important, even on the level of people who write books and authors and the relationships to them and how important authors have become in marketing their own work. Of course, it's so important. But I'm very happy that I never branded myself as a hot girl because, frankly, I get less hot every day. And also, like, I live in my head. The experience of having dirt, and maybe you agree with this, is it's not about being perceived for me. It's very cerebral. The things that I enjoy most about it are cerebral. And so making the decision of how often to put yourself out there, to be seen, to make an appearance, to kind of thrust your face out there, can be like really fraught. But I always remember that Olivia Nuzzi thing. I actually feel like I'm only just now seeing the end of an arc that started when in the summer of 2013 for me. And it's like life is very long, careers are very long, which isn't to say that like that anyone who comes out burning really bright inevitably has to burn up, but many, many people do. And I'm grateful that like it wasn't easy for me to break into media because that all contributed to the perspective that I have now.
Completely. Did you guys read, speaking about Newsy, did you read that? I think it was an article. I don't know where it was. Well, it was an article. I don't know where it was, but it was titled like, Olivia Newsy, something about that being everything wrong with media right now.
Oh, yeah. Was that on like Mediaite?
Yes. That is what it was on. Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. Just the idea of, what the narrative we've been told in the last few years is that, personality is everything, having lore is everything, people wanting to read stuff from you is everything. And where does it go too far? When is like, I want to get you guys' take on that as people who've been in media for like, or in media, who've been in media for longer. Just that idea of where do you see this all going, because,
yeah, I mean, I can tell you that part of my plans for next year with Creator Spotlight is to insert my voice into it more, maybe picture bylines. Like, I know I want to get engagement up in the newsletter, right? We've got 375,000 subscribers, and the open rate is quite good, but the click rate is relatively low, right? It's about 1%. I know it could be higher, and I'm sure it could get higher if my voice was in it more. Somebody connected with me on LinkedIn recently, and he was like, oh, I got this email from you guys, and I realized I have no idea who writes this newsletter, so I figured I'd look you up on LinkedIn because your name was there. And I checked in the subscriber data, and he had been subscribed for, I don't know, like 4 months, 5 months, and he'd opened like 20 out of the 60 emails he'd received. So I would think this guy has read a few of these. He's like them. He should know that it's me or my assistant editor, Natalia, writing this, right? And to me, that's a problem that he doesn't know that because of what this is. And it's different than Dirt, and it's different than As Seen On, right? It's twice a week. One's like a profile of people. We don't really need to be the front of that one. The front of that one is the person we're profiling, but then we do these more like articles and essays on Fridays where they should know who it's coming from, and there should be some kind of like thought leadership angle, right? So I think like what you were saying, Daisy, about burning bright and burning up, like I don't want to burn up, but I know that I need to burn a little bit, right? What it comes back to is the reality of like the economic reality of like, I need this newsletter to get more engagement, to make it more attractive to advertisers, to justify continuing to do it. So it's like the economic need, not just that do I want to be perceived? Like, no, not really. I'd be happy to, just keep doing exactly what I'm doing and it would all be good. But for business reasons, I need to be perceived a little more,
Yeah.
For business reasons, I need to be perceived. I love it.
Well, so that tweet about Substack Substack writing having its own sort of specific form came from my friend James, who we wrote about in Blank because he has a bookstore called Recluse Books, but also works in publishing for some small houses that specialize in translation and other sorts of books. So, he said that. And then our friend Amanda Killian, who did all of the artwork for our Thanksgiving package that we ran last week, responded and basically said, like, people, sort of what you were saying, Ochuko, like people have been saying this since Thought Catalog, and it's more of a product of writing online. And then she pulled up this piece that had run in the All that was meant to be a parody of the sort of like platonic Thought Catalog piece. And if you read it, it was kind of like, yeah, this could really kind of functionally be a parody of a poorly edited, braided Substack essay. And then she's like, I looked up the person who wrote it. I wonder what they think about it now. And I looked at the person who wrote it.
And it was Olivia Nuzzi.
No, it was another writer who now works at LinkedIn. So I was like, okay, we're getting into like some different layers now, because the person who wrote the Thought Catalog parody at the All, which no longer exists anymore and could just as easily be a parody of Substack, it has a day job at LinkedIn. Like I'm like, maybe that's the story. Like that is kind of increasingly the story. But it's really good. I did write a couple things for Thought Catalog. Please don't look them up. But I don't know where I was going with this. Maybe just the full arc of writers, especially. We have different priorities at different times in our lives. And if you look at like the Gawker era, you could have been the hottest shit at Gawker, but if Gawker gets sued into oblivion and you don't have the skills or the confidence to reinvent yourself, you peaked, basically. And I think there's danger when one personality becomes the face of a publication. I also think there's danger as an individual to allow one publication to become your identity. So it really does like go both ways. Like it's kind of like the boundaries thing that you were talking about. Part of maintaining boundaries is so that you do not end up in a position where you can't decouple yourself from your project.
Completely. But I will say though that it's really interesting that there seems to be this through line with people who are doing this at the highest level, that decoupling does not happen. That this is, you're thinking that's, I guess, going back to the resentment of, I guess, in a larger, broader idea, just like the demands of success, what it takes to be like really good at it. And like, for me, growing up and realizing, taking stock throughout this year for me of, what this will all take and what it demands of you and what you're willing to, give and let go, how fast you want that success to come, what path you wanting to go, and talking to a lot of my friends and grappling with it. And honestly, being really sorry for, I remember when I was in college, it was the whole thing was, if you want to get a job out of college, you should make a personal website and have all your things there. That is like, the nice, snazzy thing to do. Resumes, everyone does resumes. Now you need to do this. And last weekend, I went out with an international student, went to get coffee. She is at Lewis and Clark. And when I graduated, there were so many hurdles as an international student that you need to jump through. You need to get a big enough company to employ you immediately. It has to be in your major specifically. You can't just dilly-dally work at a coffee shop. And then you need them to like you enough to sponsor you. And then when they sponsor you, it's a lottery system. So you may or you may not get it. And so it's kind of like, it's just a lot. And, you know, she was talking to me how things are different and far more demanding under this administration, what it means where, you know, you're confronted with like AI, where people are not hiring. Like, you know, it just seems, I just felt so bad for her because she was like, what would you do? What should I do? And I had nothing to tell her. I don't know what you do. You know, I know that you need to do a lot more than I did when I graduated 4 years ago. You know, you need to maybe start a Substack now, start a TikTok, you know, become a thought leader, whatever. You know, and she was like, but I don't know enough yet. And I'm like, well, damn, like, I don't know. I actually did not know what to tell her. And so I go between this whole, you know, this whole thing of like, oh, we're young, it sucks, you know, it's so hard. And, you know, I feel, because of where I'm coming from, you know, I feel lucky to be able to do what I'm doing, you know, make a living from that. But I do feel within like myself, and within just like my peers and people younger than me, this mounting resentment and pressure of how much you need to do to get to where you want to go, and the rewards are not even what they seem to be. And I take this idea to just like different things I do, just, you know, this conversation about media that we're talking about, or, you know, starting a family and all of that, and just sitting with yourself and asking yourself, are you willing to play this game? You know, what are you willing to invest and all of that? And I think for me, this has been just one long year of asking myself that question over and over again. Are you willing to play the game? You know, are you willing to be out there and, you know, just, I guess, mourning the things that you would rather not do? And I'm not just talking about, you know, just working hard, you know, we're all working hard, that kind of thing, and doing the thing. But yeah, just so much of everything now is perception. You know, when people tell you that, oh, no one's looking at resumes anymore, you actually need to know the person. You need to connect on LinkedIn. You need to get a coffee with this person. You need to say you're interested in this specific job. And you think to a young person, like, how many times are they going to do that? What do they need to do in order to get someone to be interested enough in them to accept that LinkedIn invite and to give 30 minutes of their time, you know, for a coffee chat or whatever? So yeah, it's just like all these thoughts. And I fear that we may just all need to be okay being perceived at this point. And, you know, that might be just the ultimate currency. Attention, perception, all of that. And just, I guess, mourning that and making peace with that and deciding just how you want to pull the levers on that, you know, and just making peace with that yourself. That's where my head's at right now.
Well, speaking of making a personality the story, what did you think of the Club Chalamet profile in Wall Street Journal yesterday?
Oh, I have not read it, but I put it on my list to write about tomorrow. So you will see my thoughts in the newsletter, but I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear this. I only know who she is because of Hunter Harris. She writes about her all the time. And so I'm like, this is fun.
Are you not on Twitter?
No, I'm not on Twitter.
Because to me, she's just like a Twitter character. Never been on Twitter.
Yeah, never been. I told you I hate perception. What? Words out there? Never. So
you don't lurk? I'm more of a lurker.
I know. Still. I don't lurk. I hate notes. And I realize the reason I hate notes is because I just never like Twitter. I don't want people's random straight thoughts away from me. Yeah. Well,
okay. The club. I didn't read this Wall Street Journal profile of Club Chalamet, but I did read the headline. And what I thought was funny about it is just like how she has become this character. And, you know, I think she's like a 59-year-old woman. She started it in 2019, allegedly to like, you know, she liked this young actor. She wanted to give him more visibility, campaign for him or whatever. But, you know, she becomes the story because she is this very opinionated person. And I don't know how long it took for people to figure out her identity. But the identity doesn't really matter. I don't remember her name. I'm not going to remember her name. I'm just going to remember that she's Club Chalamet and she is very opinionated. And that, you know, now she's being profiled in the Wall Street Journal for caring so much about Timothy Chalamet. But yeah, I mean, that's just like, it's I guess it's much different than something like, you know, the Olivia Newsy story, because it's not this weird sex scandal, but it is this person like going out there and being opinionated and like caring a lot about this one thing and posting about it, right? And just like making themselves visible.
Well, there's actually a version of this. This is like kind of coming to me secondhand. I think this was a TikTok thread. There's a woman who is basically the closest you could get to being an influencer for the row. Ochuko, maybe you know who I'm talking about.
I know the story. Yes.
I don't know this.
Yes. So she was supposed to be profiled, I think, also in the Wall Street Journal about her relationship to the brand. But because the row, despite the fact that they've done a lot of stuff recently that kind of goes against their whole quiet luxury, if you know, ethos, like doing sales and stuff like that, like they allegedly killed the story and basically threw their weight around and were like, we don't want to comment on the story. We don't want you to do the story. And
I didn't know that part of it, that they killed the story.
Like, yeah, I mean, that was my perception. Again, I'm getting this like kind of secondhand. It was sort of like, well, we as a brand that buys advertising will be angry with you if you kind of like elevate this person as an influencer of our brand because they're just not like an authorized spokesperson. And so people were sort of debating like, is this, is that petty on the part of the row? Are they like getting in their own way because they're so concerned with their brand perception when like that ship has kind of sailed? And it made me think about parasociality, where it's like, I don't think Timothée Chalamet is losing sleep over Club Chalamet changing their perception of him as a human.
Well, no, good. That's also because he's out there shaping. He does so much. He's the king of press. Yeah. Maybe I'm just getting to the point you're going to make. I'm sorry, but no, yeah, sorry.
No, I think it's like, but also like for the row, it's like, is your perception as a sort of non-public brand, non-flashy brand so delicate that somebody else building a brand around their relationship to your brand is a threat? Because I would say like that's still very, very far off from, going the way of like Louis Vuitton or Von Dutch or whatever, where you're just so out there and totally co-opted by everyone. But it kind of made it seem like there's really no in between.
I think the fact that for that to be cool and for that to be important, there needs to be a perception of effortlessness, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what this has shown is that there is a lot of effort that's being put into that. And, I don't blame them for wanting to keep their brand as what it was. Like, I mean, I don't care. It is what it is. That's so out of my income bracket that I just don't care what happens in that world very much. But I do think that as someone on the outside looking in, I don't like that I know that they had to do all of that. Mm-hmm. I don't like that I know that they cared so much about that one influencer. I don't like that I know that they had to do all that behind the scenes to like get that profile scratched. I don't like that. I think it shows it's sort of like when I'm reading a book and I can see the author's, mind, mm-hmm. like, working. I can see sort of like the threads in like, whatever they're building, you can see it and it loses the beauty of the thing. And so I think in a weird way, I don't know, I can't say if it would have been better for that story to run, but I do actually think now it's a more interesting story than that they were so averse to that than whatever she did in the first place, and so maybe that was a miscalculation on their part. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I actually do think this relates to what we were talking about with making yourself the face of the project, that like you can't control who collects you. You can't control who becomes a collector of the row and talks about it. Mm-hmm. If you're a painter in the beginning, yeah, you have some control, but later on you can't control, the number one collector of your work could be somebody who is ideologically the opposite of you.
Yeah.
And I think part of what we're talking about with boundaries is I can't control who reads Dirt or becomes a super fan of Dirt. But if people have the sense that they can collect me, that's a problem. And I do think that there are people in the ecosystem who are collecting, including Substack itself. They are collecting, intellectuals, young intellectuals, especially females with their own brand, like Infinity Stones.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I would never put myself in the position to be collected by somebody else. But I would, your work, if your work is being collected, that means you have achieved a certain level of success. I just don't want to be collected. And I think like maybe that's something with Mary Kate and Ashley. And like, I don't want to read too much into it, but just the trauma of being so public from the moment you were born. I totally understand why they would want to architect something like the Row, which is like, you can't claim us, you can't collect us, you can't be an influencer on the reputation of this brand, because they are so averse to the way that their image was collected throughout their childhood. But it's like, you have to separate the art and the artist and give it up. And that's why those boundaries exist.
I didn't think about that angle at all. It's pretty interesting.
I will say, I think that it's a compelling story that they got it killed, because to me, the Row is about it's about wealth and it's about power and it's about quiet, right? So they can't stop somebody from posting on social media, but it's kind of an old school move to kill a story in the Wall Street Journal. I don't know. I'm more compelled by it.
I'm not able to find like right now the backup evidence of the Wall Street Journal thing, but I did find the open letter that she wrote to the Row breaking up with them.
I saw that as well.
Okay, so maybe somewhere in here we have some more of that context, but it's out there enough that like, again,
do you ever do something like that?
Like, write a letter to a brand that you're breaking up with them?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Would I probably break up with a brand?
I don't think I'm that genuine of a person to like ever do that.
I just don't care enough.
I like the earnest consumption.
I think nobody really comes across great in the whole thing, but it's interesting as a microcosm of like, well, this is truly where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speaking of where we're at, we've arrived at the end of the episode. So this has been Tasteland.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. This is fun. Oh my God. I love Tasteland.
Thank you. Listener, we will see you next week.